Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, of course, ending the Rings of Power Season 1 with the finale. I know I did not post a video for Episode 7 because it frankly was boring. Well, we'll get into that. But I wanted to save it for this episode and talking about the finale as a whole, and pretty much just talking about the whole Rings of Power Episode 1. It's going to be a doozy. It's going to be a big one. Got my little cheap Aragon sword, Andril. This is the second time I filmed this. And I ended up talking about this sword for like 10 minutes or something. And all I'll say is, I really wanted to get the United Cutlery version, but I got this when I was like really younger, and I didn't really know that there was a different version between United Cutlery and like the cheap third-party made ones. But this is what this is. I have some legit stuff. So once Lord of the Rings comes back into the realm of just more like the happening thing, more trending, maybe when season 2 comes out, maybe I'll feature like one Lord of the Rings item that I have in each video, or if you guys want, I can show off all the stuff that I have. I don't know, but yeah, I just wanted to have a little piece of Lord of the Rings, since we're gonna be talking about a lot of Lord of the Rings. I have my notes here for just this episode, and it's probably one of the longest ones besides the first episode, or the first video that we did for the first episode. But again, this one's gonna be a long one, so sit tight, grab a snack, grab a drink, settle down. Maybe you want to listen to this in your car or doing laundry, whatever it is, but it's gonna be a doozy. So sit back and let's talk Lord of the Rings. So episode 7, like I said, it was just really boring to me when I watched it. I remember kind of like, man, how long is this episode? And I mentioned it in the last video for episode 6 that I watched it with my dad, and even he was like, okay, this is kind of slow. And what I remember was it was a lot of catching up from that big battle from episode 6, in the Southlands. And one of the biggest things that I can remember is that the queen is blind now, and then Isildur supposedly is dead. I don't think he's dead, because we saw at the end of that episode the horse, Elendil lets the horse go off, and then the horse just goes runs off. I thought they were going to reveal something about that in episode 8, but they didn't. But we do know, okay, as you guys know from the past videos, if you don't know Lord of the Rings, I'm going to be talking about spoilers, at least what happens in the original texts, the Silmarillion and Lord of the Rings primarily. So keep that in mind. So if you don't want to hear that, this is not the video for you. But if you don't care, or if you know already, or if you just want to learn, you're in the right place. So in Lord of the Rings, even if you just watched the Fellowship of the Ring, you know that, or if you don't know, Isildur is the one who cuts off the hand of Sauron and defeats Sauron. And once he takes the ring and he fails to destroy it, and then of course eventually Isildur is killed in possession of the ring. But so there's no way that Isildur can be dead in the Rings of Power show, is why I'm saying this. So he has to be alive, but I was surprised that they didn't allude to anything in episode 8. So we're really gonna have to wait till season 2 to see anything, and I'm gonna guess that in the trailer for season 2, when it comes out, we're gonna see like Isildur being like climbing out of the thing with a horse trying to get him, or something like that. It's gonna be very much like Aragorn being rescued by Brago in the Two Towers. I think it's gonna be kind of like that. Anyways, and then of course episode 6 ended with Mordor being created. There wasn't much continuation of that in episode 7 that I can remember, except for Galadriel and Theo going through the trees and everything, or the forest, and then those orcs going in there wasn't really a big thing. But then again, we see Elendil being very, he's got a lot of resentment towards Galadriel. We should never have come here. I should never have saved her. And then they go back to Numenor. Galadriel takes Halbrand to Eregion, and the Harfoots keep going on their journey. I don't think anything really happens in episode 7. I don't know if you can hear that my dog's having a cough attack. But he's fine. Anyways, so that's episode 7. Like I said, I feel like it was a really big filler episode, and I expected episode 8 to be this big, huge, climactic, awesome, like, battle sequence show episode and everything, but it was not that. I didn't watch it till Saturday night, so I was about 24 hours late to watching the episode, or technically 48 because it comes out Thursday night at midnight. But I had seen I think Rings of Power's Instagram had posted people's tweets and stuff like that. Obviously nothing revealing, but people were just saying like, oh, like I was in tears, or it was this amazing climactic episode. And I don't know, I watched it. Overall, I mean, I'll give my opinion about the episode as a whole and the season as a whole at the end. But let's just go chronologically through the episode. So we start off with the stranger back, in the whole, he's on his own, doing his own thing, and at the same time, Nori and Sadek, and was Poppy with them? I think Poppy was with them, and Marigold was with them as well, the 4 of them. So the 4 of them go off, and they're chasing him, and he gets cornered by what he thinks is Nori, but it's those 3 women. And there's the one who has like a buzz cut, who seems like the leader, and she has the staff. And there's the 2 other ones, who one is called the Ascetic, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's not aesthetic, it's Ascetic, ascetic, I don't know. And then there's the Nomad, the Ascetic, whatever that one is the one with the helmet, and I think she throws the knives, and the Nomad is the woman who's a little bit bigger, darker skin, I believe. And she has a big shield, or it's like the saucer looking thing that has the stars on it. Anyways, they like confront him and trap him, and they're trying to use their magic on each other. And they're like, "You are Lord Sauron, we're here to serve you." And I was just like, oh shoot, he's Sauron? And I'm writing my notes down on how I thought, what I was thinking in that moment. Because obviously if you watch the episode, you know he isn't Sauron, but we're going to get to that. So the stranger Sauron, I was just like, oh shoot, that's crazy. I didn't expect that. I'm like, okay. I just kind of accepted it blindly. We go to Eregion, and Galadriel brings Halbrand there, and they're trying to heal him and all that stuff. And then Celebrimbor and Halbrand talk in Celebrimbor's workshop, and Halbrand's like, oh, my master talked about your works and all this stuff. And we see the 3 stones there. There's a orange, there's a blue, a red, and a diamond rough stones in there. And immediately I was like, oh, that's the 3 rings, that's the 3 elven rings, that's awesome. I immediately knew that. And I believe in that same scene is when Halbrand he's giving that advice to Celebrimbor, and he's like, what if you fused the mithril with the lesser ore? And Celebrimbor's like, oh, that's a great idea. And, he's like, oh, that's smart. And then we go to, I don't remember if there's anything in between it, but we go to the 3 elves, Gil-galad, 4 of them actually, Gil-galad, Elrond, Galadriel, and Celebrimbor all talking about, this whole thing. And Gil-galad's like, we're out of time. But Celebrimbor says, this is not just power of the flesh, it's power over the flesh, or something similar. I know he says power over the flesh. And Galadriel's like, what? She's like intrigued when he says this. And at the end, when they all leave, and it's just Celebrimbor and Galadriel says, who told you that? Where'd you hear that? And he's like, it doesn't matter. He's very like, what's the word? He just doesn't want to confront her. He doesn't want to talk about it. So I forget what the word is, but he's just submissive, not submissive. You guys know what I'm talking about. but he's just like, I don't want to talk about it. It's over. It doesn't matter. But I'm like, oh, so I even have it here. Seems as though seems as though Celebrimbor has been talking with Sauron somehow. So then I'm like, oh, then how would? Because I know from reading Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion that Sauron, he is the one who teaches the elves how to make these rings. He gives them this advice, and he's the one who influences them into doing all this. And so he's in the ear of the elves. So I'm like, okay, so if the stranger is all the way over here, how could he have talked to Celebrimbor? Doesn't make sense. And then boom, we go back to these guys, the ascetic, the nomad, and the third servant of Sauron. Tell him Sauron remains under the veil, and he's starting to understand who he is. They need to take him to Rune to find out more, to release his power. And if you guys know the map of Middle Earth, Mordor, the Southlands in the show, Mordor is about down here, and then more kind of northeast, kind of like this way. You have the Sea of Rune and the Lands of Rune, which is pretty cool, and more on that later. Then we have the battle between these three people and the Harfoots, the stranger, and they all fight each other, and they're like in the trees throwing stones at each other, and Sadak unfortunately gets a dagger thrown at him into his stomach, but then he like magically appears underneath some shrubbery, and he opens the lid, and he like, what is he? Does he stab her foot, or he just holding her foot? No, he's holding the other lady's foot, and that's when he gets stabbed. And then he's like, grabs her foot and stabs it, I think. And seemed like he was like fine, and then he was just like holding his stomach like it was like a paper cut. Anyways, so then they fight or whatever, and then Nori goes up to the stranger, supposedly Sauron at this point, and she's like, get up, you have to help us, you have to fight. And he's like, no, I'm gonna hurt you. And they told me who I am, and she's like, doesn't matter who they say you are, you can choose who you want to be. And at this point, because I'm thinking he's Sauron, and I'm like, oh, I really hope they're not trying to go in this avenue of like, you could be whoever you want to be, doesn't matter if you're predestined to be good or evil, you can change it. And I was like, please don't go in that route. That just seems so scapegoaty and just lazy writing. And I was just like, oh, please don't do that. But of course, she's like, grab it, because she has the staff, and he grabs the staff, and he gets up, and he's like, you are of the shadow, you are of the darkness, something to that effect. And he's like, I'm not what you said I am, you must return to where you came from, something to that effect. And they're like, he's not Lord Sauron, he's an Istar, which I'm guessing is a singular for Istari. Which I don't remember ever hearing in Tolkien's literature, but I know Istari is the name of the wizards, and which, of course, when the stranger's talking to Nori later on, she's like, they called you something Istar, and he's like, wise one, but in your tongue. And I look to my dad, and I'm like, it means wizard, and he goes, it means wizard. And I was like, yes, I knew it. And I think, I don't remember, but I think I mentioned in the previous videos that I thought he was one of the blue wizards, because Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast, the ones that Tolkien wrote about the most, like specifically Gandalf, I know he arrives in the Third Age in the year of 1000, or I should say 1000 in the year of the Third Age, however you say it. I'm 90% sure that's the right year. Obviously we're in the Second Age in this show, so it'd be too early for Gandalf, and like I think we mentioned as well in the previous videos, that Gandalf, especially Gandalf himself, but in general of all the Astari that came, they wouldn't have announced themselves so loudly, like coming as a comet from the heavens. But again, this is a show, and they have different freedoms, I guess you could say, creative freedoms to do what they want. But even more so that I more confirm that this is the Blue Wizard, because one of the Blue Wizards, there's two of them. It's one of the Blue Wizards because the Blue Wizards both go to Rune and they stay there. And we obviously get to know that the stranger eventually he's like, okay, I have to go to Rune, and Nori goes with him, and we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the episode. But all the more reason to say that he is one of the Blue Wizards. One note I would say, and we've seen it, especially I would say like in Marvel, excuse me, they are adapting similarly to this because they're adapting comic books into film and TV shows. It's very similar. That, like, you know, when you have a superhero whose outfit is, say, purple, they'll have, before they become the hero, or when like they're undercover, like they're not their superhero outfit, or it's their origin story, they haven't found out who they are, they have inklings of purple in their outfit or purple in the background or whatever it is to symbolize or to pay homage to that character in the comics in their old uniform. It would have been cool to see that similarly with the Rings of Power and with this wizard, if they would have had like inklings of blue like on his outfit. But at the same time, it makes sense that they didn't do that because, you know, his clothes were given to him by Nori and the Harfoots. So I was like, I get it, but maybe in the second season maybe he's sewn his own clothing, his own robe or something, and has a little bit of blue. I don't think that they're gonna go with a whole, like, you know, this kind of blue. It's not really showing up on this camera, but kind of. It's more of a navy blue. It's coming across as a dark blue on the camera, but kind of a navy blue. I think it's more of a royal blue, but I digress. But that'd be kind of cool. Now, continuing on. One thing I wanted to know was that when they're fighting the one lady who's unnamed because she doesn't talk, but the one that has a buzz cut who held the staff, they turn it. I put ghost mode because I don't know what to call it, but like their physical form is gone and they just go to, like, they look like ghosts. They look like spirits. She had a crown. It had 2 spikes here and 1 in the middle, and it reminded me of the Twilight ring wraiths, and specifically that's when Fellowship of the Ring in Weathertop, when Frodo puts on the ring and he sees the ring wraiths all in their ghost form, or how they look like as men. I only call them Twilight ring wraiths because that's what the toys were called for those specific figures and characters. But it reminded me of that, so I'm like, oh, okay, who could they have been? So if you have any inclination of who they could have been, let me know. Or I think they're just random characters that are written for the show to be servants, these magical sorcerers, necromancers of a lesser being than Sauron and the Astari. But still pretty cool. But I just feel like it was just all this build up, and they're just like, okay, they're gone. They're just whatever, you know. Let's see. So of course, Sadek then dies. He's like, okay, I just want to watch the sunset. And I feel like the show itself and the showrunners and just everybody just had so much love and praise for the Harfoots, and especially for Sadek as well, that they didn't really make him die in any dramatic light. Like, it wasn't like we didn't see him pass in like a scene. It was just like, I'm gonna watch the sunset, and then it was like, okay, next scene. I didn't really mind it, but it's because I didn't have a specific love for the character or anything like that. But it's like, if you're gonna kill a character off, you should show some. And he was a supporting character. It wasn't like he's some random Harfoot, you know. Like, I feel like if Marigold died, I'd say, okay, you know, she didn't have that many lines. Whereas Sadek dies, I'm like, I feel like he could have had some more attention when he died. But again, it's a small thing. It's not gonna change. I mean, if that scene would have been done beautifully, maybe the episode would have had more emotional gravity to it, and I would have liked it more. I don't know. But my question is, if these sorcerers were so powerful or intelligent, how could they mistake him as Sauron? But I guess it makes sense because the Astari are Maiar and they're very powerful beings, and so they could have thought, Because of Sauron's power, they could have thought it was similar power. I don't know. They have a metal detector of power. I don't know. So then I put, so maybe Halbrand is indeed Sauron, whispering evil to the elves. Makes way more sense now that Halbrand would be, because we talked about in the past episodes that, how did Adar know who Halbrand was, and all the different clues that we've had. And I don't remember if I thought Halbrand was Sauron in the past. I don't want to say that I knew it, but it makes sense. And the forge in Eregion blows up, but they find a new way to bond the ores. That they can't force it, but they have to allow them to fuse together in a natural way. Galadriel then receives something about Halbrand's lineage from one of the elves from the library or whatever it is. Halbrand is suspicious, so he follows Galadriel out, and she's by the river, the Galanduin, I believe is the name of the river. And she's reading it, and she's like, "Tell me who you are," and throws down the lineage of his house, of the Southlands supposed house. And I really like this next block of scene. Hunker down. I really liked it, and I think we're gonna really get in depth with Sauron right now. So get ready. Okay. So I really liked the switch of Halbrand to Sauron, because Halbrand just goes, "Galadriel, what are you talking about?" Kind of, he's just very like, "Hey, I'm your buddy, I'm your friend. Like, we're supposed to be doing this stuff to save the elves together, right?" And he just goes, like, "What have you done?" Like, just very, just like serious, like, "I'm sorry now, lady. Like, you better watch it now, or I'm gonna just destroy you." And she pulls a dagger, and in that moment, before she even hits him with a dagger, it was like split second. I'm like, okay, how are they gonna do this? Because there's a lot of this talk about the show, and whether you're for it or against it, and I'm not going to say whether I'm for it or against it, but the wokeness of the show, that's been like the big argument of the show, especially with Galadriel, right? People were like, "Oh, I don't want this huge primary center role of this show to be a woman Galadriel, or that Galadriel is supposed to be this person and not this person, or whatever the case may be." Regardless of, or I guess included with all that, in that scene, I'm like, okay, how are they going to do this? Because yes, Galadriel is a very powerful woman, and especially at the time of Lord of the Rings, she's one of the most powerful elves in her time, if not the most powerful elf at that time. With that being said, at this time, in the Rings of Power, in the Second Age, whether it's in the Silmarillion or in the appendices or whatever that they're using for their information, you also have Sauron, who's very powerful, and especially in this time that he's still able to take human form and also shapeshift, he's very powerful. Even without the Ring of Power, he's very powerful. So, but then again, with this show, we don't know how they're doing this show because of how, what direction they're going to go. And so when Galadriel takes the knife out, I'm like, okay, is Galadriel going to be able to overpower Sauron? Because again, we don't know how they're going to do this show. But I think they did it true to the original text, that Sauron just completely overpowers her. I think that's the way to go. That's the correct way to go with the lore of Lord of the Rings and everything surrounding the Tolkien verse. And so, because it's a great way to show how powerful Sauron is. Because if you've never read the books, if you've never even just read, I don't really know if you get the sense of Sauron's true power in the original trilogy films. Maybe a little bit more in The Hobbit. But really reading the books, you get a sense of how powerful, especially like first Morgoth and then going to Sauron, they're still extremely powerful. That's a whole different conversation. But I feel like they did a good job of showing the sense of power and magnitude that Sauron really holds. Because this whole show, we're led to believe that Galadriel is this, like, badass, super powerful warrior chick. And she, like, first episode, she kills that cave troll by herself. The snow troll, technically. And she's doing all this stuff by herself. And so you're led to believe, okay, she could, who's this Lord Sauron guy to could go against her? But if you're like me, I'm like, Sauron's gonna wipe the floor with Galadriel. But again, I'm like, how are they gonna play it out? But they play it out good. She goes for the stab, and he's just like, okay, lady, listen. He just, I was like, oh, okay. So that was good. I like that. And I'm trying to see what they do next. Does she put the blade here? Or that's later on, when they're on the boat. Yeah, it's later on the boat. So she goes for the stab. He moves the knife away. And then I think it just snaps. And she's back in shoot, I'm blanking out now. Where is she? She's with Finrod, her brother. I know that. She's back in the Undying Lands, right? Right? I don't remember. I just know she's with Finrod. Because, yeah, I'm just going to keep it at that. I'm trying to think of what city she would have been in. I don't remember. Put in the comments if you know where she was at that time. Because I know they were in Middle Earth at the time. Or maybe they were. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. I don't want to confuse. But anyways, she's with her brother Finrod. And immediately she's like, get out of my head. And she's talking to Finrod, and he's like, oh, I didn't die in that battle, or Sauron didn't kill me. He's trying to save it, you know. But of course, it's just Sauron trying to use Galadriel's brother and the memory of her brother, the loving memory of her brother, to twist her mind. And then it switches. Or no, before he switches, Finrod goes, remember what I told you under this tree? Touch the darkness again. I was like, ooh. And then boom, she's back on the raft with Halbrand. And, you know, he's talking to her, and he's like, you know, you're the one who saved me. You're the one who brought me to Numenor. You're the one who brought me to Middle Earth. I wanted to stay in Numenor. This has all been you. And then he starts talking like, you know, you're the one who said no matter how dark someone's past is, you told me my darkness didn't matter. You told me the bad deeds that I've made before, they don't matter. Like, I can correct my life. And again, another moment, and I'm like, oh, please don't try to make it like Sauron's trying to be this goody guy, and he's trying to save lives, and he's trying to turn his life around, you know. Because again, I don't know what to think with this show, because they changed a lot of things, and of course, like we said, you never know how these shows are going to evolve a Tolkien's work, or any content, original content in that sense, whether it's Lord of the Rings or something else. Now, what they then do, let me just consult my notes just to make sure I'm on the right track. Yes. Okay, excuse me. And he's like, you know, you're the one who told me I could correct my past and all these things. And he keeps just telling her all this stuff that I'm here to save Middle Earth, and you know, I'm gonna save the elves, and you can only save the elves with me, and we can save Middle Earth together. You know, you can be my queen. And she's like, oh, and what about you? You're supposed to be my king. And another homage, I feel like, to the original Lord of the Rings trilogy and the original Lord of the Rings books.